Okay, so yesterday we read through the rest of the second parak just in order to get an idea of like what the parak is about. Seems like it, loosely speaking, it's going through other Deos and talking about things you need to know or like what the middle path looks like. Fair description?
Yes.
Okay, so today the focus is going to be on the halachos about shtika. So let's read through all three of them again to start off with. Okay, this is in parak Beis, halacha daled. Lolam yarbe adam b'shtika. A person should always, and let's note questions as we go through this time. Okay, lolam yarbe adam b'shtika. A person should always increase in silence. Yeah.
So what does it mean, increase in silence?
Right. Because silence you usually think of as a non-thing.
Yeah.
So increase in silence is just a weird lesson, as if silence is like a,
Yeah.
you know, give me more silence. Like that's not a thing that people say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not happening.
So now that sounds like if you combine that in one sentence, which it seems to be because it says below, that sounds like it is saying cut down on which types of statements you say. That the only types of statements you should say are statements of chachma or statements that are necessary for practical, physical things.
Yeah, maybe it's like maximize silence, like minimize speech.
Yeah, maximize is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say?
Yeah, like it sounds like you're saying like it's not a given that people are invited. Like the majority of the time, we're usually talking in idle chatter.
Yeah.
So like increase your silence. Silence is a negative thing, but like increase the activity of not talking. Like,
yeah. Right.
Or
It's
not
activity.
idle chatter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The Rambam in Pirkei Avot on Lo Matasi Tov L'Guf El Shtika has the breakdown of speech into 5 categories. He has 2 breakdowns. He has into 4 categories and into 5 categories. Are you familiar with that?
No.
All right.
I
So
don't know.
yeah. Let me read it really quickly in English because I did type it in English. When I was going through this with my my Pirkei Avos class, because I think it actually sheds light on this thing here. So I'm not going to do his whole thing. I'm going to talk about his.
I think it's a question of whether the Mishnah is Lumsatli Gov El Shtika or Lumsatli Gov Mishtika.
Oh, really? I've never seen the Mishtika.
I think that's in the.
Okay, you can check. Yeah.
Wait, what was it?
The standard gear says Lo Matasi Tov L'Guf El Shtika. I found nothing better for the body than, or I haven't found any good for the body except for silence. And then the other one is I've only found Mishtika. Mishtika, that's interesting. How does the Rambam quote it he quotes it in our halachos, right? Elashtika. So he quotes Elashtika. Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it does either. I mean, unless Isaac's pointing out that people do think it changes the meaning. So he says, I'm just going to read this really quickly in English because I think I'll have to think about it. So he's going to quote 2 speech division schemes. Okay, it was said in Sefer Hamidot, don't know what that is, that one of the wise men. Usually it is, right? But for some reason, I'm led to think that it's not that here because I feel like if it were, I would have put it as a footnote. So I'm relying on past self. Yeah. With a lowercase s. Yeah. It was said in Sefer Hamidot that one of the wise men was seen to be especially silent to the extent that he only spoke very little, as most silent people do. They said to him, "Why are you so quiet?" He said, "I have examined speech and found it to be divided into 4 categories. The first category is speech which is entirely harmful and without any benefit, such as cursing people and inappropriate language and things like that. Speech of this kind is complete folly. The second category is speech which is harmful in one respect and beneficial in another, such as praising a person in order to obtain a benefit from him. But that praise antagonizes his enemy and harms one whom is praised. So it's like a double-edged sword type thing. Therefore, the person should refrain from this on account of this, and he shouldn't speak in this category of speech. The third category is speech that has neither benefit nor harm, such as the majority of people's conversations. How the city wall was built, of course, that's what we all talk about in our downtime, how so-and-so's house was built, and how a description of the beauty of so-and-so's house, all this architecture, and the abundance of such and such a country's produce, and other things like that, which are superfluous. The wise man said that even this category is superfluous and has no benefit. The fourth category is comprised of statements which are entirely beneficial, such as speech about knowledge and virtues, and a person's speech about matters which pertain to the maintenance of his life and the preservation of his existence. So those are... It's beneficial, and examples are knowledge, virtues, and things that are regarding the maintenance of his life and preservation of his existence. I don't know if those two are.
Wait, there's how many categories?
Yeah, four. Yeah.
In total, I'm saying.
In total, there's 4 in this first scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me finish the paragraph. In this category alone, it is proper to speak. The wise man said, anytime I hear something, I examine it. If I found it to be in this 4th category, I spoke about it. But if it was in the others, I was silent from it. The master of ethics said, behold, this man in his wisdom, that he has omitted 3/4 of statements. This is a wondrous wisdom which is proper to emulate. So that's division number 1. Yeah.
What was the second category?
The things that are beneficial and detrimental.
Like what?
Like praising someone to obtain a benefit, but his enemies hear it and then want to harm him. Yeah.
I think that something I'm thinking about, there's a very subtle difference between saying increase your quietness versus decrease your
Yeah,
speech.
I think so also.
Because like saying to decrease your speech is like, well, so first off, by saying you should increase your silence, it's framing it in a way, like I said, like it's like an activity, like you should engage in the act of being silent, not to say you should engage in the act of not speaking, which would mean that you're quiet and like you have all these thoughts running through your mind and like you should like always be like, oh, can't say that, like, but rather you should engage in silence. And like obviously I'm adding a little bit here, I don't know if this is what the Rambam's saying, but like that, like it should like also be silent in your mind, like you should be like engaging in this activity and like not just not speaking like idle chatter, but also like the more that you increase this, the less idle chatter will be just going through your mind.
I do think that is your own addition,
Yeah.
which may be true, but I don't think that's what the Rambam is saying, of silence in the mind. And I do think it'll be a natural result of implementing this.
Right.
I also do think, though, that the thing of increasing in silence, you could either say it the way you said it, which is silence is an activity, and like that's a valuable thing, and like having more time in which you're quiet is a good thing. But then I think you could also read the Rambam as saying increasing in silence means actively stop yourself from saying things. You know, silence yourself, which is also different than minimizing. I mean, it's putting the emphasis. Yeah, it's putting the emphasis on when you were about to speak. Think about what you're saying, and then instead of saying that thing, don't say that thing. Yeah.
Right.
But then if you like slowly get yourself to not have things you want to say naturally,
Yeah.
then you should keep, like you could make yourself want to say things and not say
No. I don't mean that as an inherent virtue. I mean that like
Maybe that's where you
Well,
start.
that's what the Chazal are commanding you to do be yarba b'shtika. But the ideal would be to the point where you don't have to do it as an act. Like you just naturally are not interested in talking about those things. Yeah. Let me do the Rambam's next categorization though, because this is really I think where the Mishnah Torah comes from.
I know just one thing. He's treating Speaker. I think like the point that we're picking up on is that he's treating the silence as a noun, not just an absence.
Yes, right. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so now here's his categorization. But I say, so that last categorization was in terms of benefit and detriment. Okay, is entirely detrimental, beneficial and detrimental, neither, and then entirely beneficial.
Right.
Okay.
The Rambam only has two.
In the Mishnah Torah, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's now the Rambam's categorization. Okay, but I say that speech should be divided according to the obligation of our Torah into 5 categories. Okay, commanded, prohibited, objectionable, desirable, and permissible. Okay, the first category is commanded, namely studying Torah, teaching it, analyzing its explanation. This is a positive commandment with which we are commanded, as it is stated, and you shall speak of them. And it is a mitzvah like any other. So much has already been stated, urging us to learn Torah, that this treatise cannot contain even part of it. 2. The second category is speech which is prohibited and which we are cautioned against, such as false testimony, lying, gossip, tale-bearing, and blasphemy. And there are many verses in the Torah which refer to this category. Included in this is lashon hara and nivul peh. Third category is objectionable speech, which is speech that has no benefit for the person himself, neither in relation to obedience nor rebellion, such as the majority of the conversations of the masses. What happened, what was, how such and such a king behaves in his palace, what this is a broader categories, what caused the death of so-and-so or the wealth of so-and-so. Our sages call this sicha batela, idle chatter, and those who are pious would strive exceedingly to distance themselves from these statements. It is said of Rav, the student of Rukiya, which he quotes in our thing also, that he never engaged in sicha batela in his life. Similarly, included in this category is when a person disparages a virtue or praises a vice, whether moral or intellectual. So interesting here, it's not prohibited speech, it's objectionable. It's either objectionable because it's a waste of time or because it's harmful but not prohibited. Like disparaging a virtue or praising a vice, that's actually harmful.
But not usher.
But not author, right? So that's why he's calling it
interesting.
objectionable. So there's like a subdivision within objectionable. Okay,
Right.
that's 3. 4th category is desirable speech, namely speaking in praise of intellectual and moral virtues or disparaging vices in these same 2 categories, and arousing the soul in these ways with sayings and songs, and distancing the soul from them through these same means. Similarly, praising the wise and telling of the greatness of their virtues in order to make their conduct beloved in people's eyes, so that they follow in their ways, and degrading the wicked and their vices in order to make their actions and their memory despicable in people's eyes, so that they avoid them and don't follow in their ways. This category meaning to say learning the noble attributes and removing from base attributes would be called derech eretz. That, again, it's not a mitzvah to talk about chachamim in a praiseworthy way, and it's not a mitzvah to speak in a disparaging way about flaws and vices, but it's a good thing to do. Okay, and yeah,
That's like Gedolin stories.
yeah, Gedolin stories, right? The 5th category is permissible speech, which is speech that pertains to a person's business, livelihood, food, drink, clothing, and his other needs. This is permissible in that it is neither desirable nor objectionable. Rather, if a person desires, he may speak of this as much as he wants, and if he desires, he may be silent from it. That's the 5th category. Okay. Then he says, it is regarding this category,
This
this 5th, only the 5th, that minimization of a person's speech is preferable.
Right. Only say what's necessary.
Right. And he'll explain why. The books of Musar caution us against excess in this type of speech, but regarding prohibited and objectionable speech, there is no need to say or command us, for it is appropriate to be entirely silent from it. So those 2 categories, just never speak in at all. Okay. And then regarding commanded and desirable speech, if a person could speak about it all the days of his life, all my life, this would be ideal. However, he needs 2 conditions for this. First is that, okay, then he goes on and he says, Ram says this in the Mishnah Torah also, is that his actions should be consistent with his statements. Okay, as they say, how beautiful are statements from the mouths of those who act in accordance with them. Regarding this, it is stated, expounding is not the essence, but action is. Aloha midrash eker el hamatz, which is in the same. No, yeah, it's in the same Mishnah. Okay, it's in the same Mishnah.
But can you just say that last thing?
Yeah,
again?
that your actions should be consistent with your statements. You shouldn't be a hypocrite.
Right.
And regarding this, it is said, Loha midrash hu ha'ikr ela hamata. Midrash is not ikr. Now, midrash here does not mean like midrash of God. It means talking about stuff is not ikr. Masa is. Okay. That's that. I think I quoted this recently in a shiur. The Marcus Aurelius thing. Stop talking so much about being a good man and just be one. You know, that reminds me of that. The sages said, I'm almost on with this. The sages said to a pious individual who taught good midos, expound, and for you it is befitting to expound, meaning because he was pious. And the prophet said, rejoice in Hashem, you who are righteous, to the upright praise is befitting. Okay, the second condition is brevity, that a person should strive to maximize the ideas in the fewest words rather than the opposite. This is what the sages meant by their statement, a person should always teach his student concisely. So just to summarize here, 5 categories of speech: prohibited, objectionable, what's the order he did? Commanded, prohibited, objectionable, desirable, and permissible. So prohibited and objectionable, you should never speak at all. Okay. Commanded and desirable, you should speak as much as you want. However, only if you are consistent with it and if it's concise.
Right.
What do you mean?
Meaning that your actions are in line with your words. And then only in the 5th category do the Chazal say you should minimize it. Meaning it's permissible, you can do it, but you should minimize it and not engage in it more than necessary.
Well, aren't we saying that for commanded and?
I think we're saying something slightly different, because with commanded and desirable, you should speak in it as much as you can, but when you're speaking of it, do it concisely. This is something, if you can get away without talking about it at all, it's good to minimize it.
Right.
You know, and clearly, I think we should also say it concisely, but like you should try to minimize the amount of time you spend talking about permissible stuff, or in the permissible category.
It's not just that you should say as much as you want of it, but concisely.
Yeah, meaning like practically speaking, you should always look for opportunities to speak in commanded or in beneficial ways. But when you do it, just be concise. You know.
What's the label for the 5th category again?
He calls it permissible. Optional might be another one. Yeah. So I think this helps as an overview.
I think the detrimental ones you should also minimize as much as possible.
No, you can do it at all.
Is it 0?
But saying minimize is different than saying don't do it at all. Meaning you should not, you would not say don't engage in any speech about your practical stuff. you need to do speech very practical stuff, right? Like, for example, we don't have an ideal in Judaism of a vow of silence. That's not an ideal,
Okay.
you know. And even yeshiva bachrim who take a tiny dibur, that's not a that's not an inherently Jewish thing, you know. So talk as much as you need about was that a thing?
Yeah, I did that in McDonald's.
Oh yeah, right. For some reason,
You guys did that.
I think it's like a popular thing that that people do. I feel like that's in the category.
Who did that one about this?
I think it was like a thing to do.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm saying it's not an ideal. Meaning, if you
Right.
use that in a Deos correcting way, then that's fine. But yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't know that you did that. It wasn't a knock.
Yeah.
Weirdo. We see the difference or not?
Not exact. Well, there is a benefit to talking about optional things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the Mishnah Torah. What? Optional things are like hold on just a minute.
No, that's better.
Hold on, I just closed it. Give good
Optional is like you don't.
No, that would be
That's
beneficial. Optional is speech that pertains to a person's business, livelihood, food, drink, clothing, and his other needs. Why isn't that beneficial? Because it sounds like the way he's using the word beneficial.
Praiseworthy.
Yeah. It's like necessary. It's necessary for stuff. You know.
Well, I'm saying beneficial. We mean like more like laudable.
Yeah, praiseworthy. Right. I think that's actually the Hebrew that he uses. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when someone's talking about his business, it's not like, oh, do it more. You know, like it's, you know, or you shouldn't do that. Yeah. Okay. So back to the Rambam. So Lean says, Lo yidaber ela b'devar chachma. That is praiseworthy / commanded. And then obedvarim shetzarich len l'chaye gufo, things that are necessary for practical needs, that's optional or permissible.
Right.
Amru al Rav, Talmid Rabbeinu Kadosh, Shalosh Sach Sicha B'Tela Kol Yamav, V'zohi Sichas Ro Kol Adam. So Rav, the student of Rabbeinu Kadosh, never spoke Sicha B'Tela in all of his life, and that's the majority of majority of people's conversations. Yeah.
I think I just realized why he goes so at length about
Yeah.
this, why he's so verbose about it.
Why?
Because this is
Mm.
laudable things that he's talking about. He's talking about
Ah.
praiseworthy category.
Mhm.
Like he's bringing Gedolim stories to life.
Right. That's good. Very meta. Very self-referential. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting point, by the way. And I'm not saying this at all in disrespect to Rabbeinu HaKadosh, but it is interesting.
That's Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi or Judah the Prince.
I think
That's the password name. What?
It's impressive.
It's impressive.
You will not have any.
Yeah, exactly.
And also be known as like, not as like, you know,
Right. He's not just a quiet guy. Yeah.
like, you feel like it must be like a leader of the nation all the time. Like, if you have connections with other, like, world leaders.
That sounds familiar. I mean,
This is
Yehuda
the
Nasi definitely did.
The Talmud of Rabbeinu. It's not really.
Yeah. Rabbeinu Kadosh definitely did. I was going to say, though, that not a knock on Rabbeinu Kadosh, but you see that Rabbeinu Kadosh, we don't say this about.
Yeah.
Right? And meaning, even within the upper echelon of great Talmidei Chachamim, Rav was the one who had this reputation, you know? So I gotta tell an anecdote, which I'm going to, sorry, recording people, I'm going to pause this.
How many is that?
The what?
I know the-
End of the year. There's a date on the calendar. I'll look it up. Remind me after. All right. Okay. So vafilu b'tzarchei haguf lo yarbe adam devarim. So that was what he said in the. This is not Pirkei Avos, but that's what he said in the Pirkei Avos, right? Okay. V'al zeh tzivu chachamim v'amru kol amar b'devarim mevi chet. So that's different. That the more you speak, then the more you bring sin. V'amru lo matasi tov laguf tov elashtika, which is always a funny lesson. Why laguf?
Yeah.
For your perfection, I understand, but what about like why the body? It could be that that's what he means. What he's connecting to the hate thing, because I don't think hate here means has to mean sin, like transgression. It could mean like error or mistakes. You know, meaning the more you talk, the more you're going to get yourself in trouble. In terms of like saying something that you regret, or like upsetting somebody, or like making commitments, or you know, like the more you, if you're just a talker, you're exposing yourself to like
Mhm.
risks. Yeah.
But it could also be that, like, if you talk about, like, let's say, like, I don't know, like, if you're like, let's say sexual things, if
Yeah.
you're talking about that, then like that'll sort of like direct your focus or that
Right.
area.
That's true. Yeah. So you're saying that that's why it says goof?
I'm saying like it could
Or you're saying the
literal
fate?
fate, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good. Good. Yeah. I was sorry. I didn't fill in the connecting bridge here. I was saying, is there a connection between kol amar b'dvarim mevechit and lo matzati laguf tov el shtika?
Uh-huh. Oh, so you're saying it's gonna lead to
So I think why the goof, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I thought you were saying with the sexual stuff,
Oh.
that like it's actually affecting your instincts, you know,
Oh,
and
that's what you
your
were saying.
desires.
yeah, that works.
Was it?
That's good.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I was saying like marbechet, maybe chait is in a mishleic sense
Yeah.
that brings about consequences, and that's also what it is goof.
Oh,
Like you bring about actual harm to yourself from externally, not just internally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think I brought this up in a Monday night shir, but the Shackleton's Antarctic voyage. So Shackleton this was during the age of British exploration, and Shackleton was this captain who was, I think they were trying to find the South Pole. So they went to Antarctica from Britain, long way, and then like they were in the ship, and it was early on, I think, and then sometimes this happens in the winter. Suddenly the entire ocean just froze instantaneously, and then just crushed the ship, and then they were stranded for the whole winter. You know, so I did say this, or
yeah.
yeah, right.
I was gonna say, so
Okay.
it wasn't gonna be first.
So it's an amazing story of survival, and spoiler alert, no one died, which is insane, and they survived the whole winter. But they said that one of the things that they did was when they were like, they obviously ran out of food, you know, and had like really rationed stuff. So one of the things that they did at night is they would have dinner with each other, which meant that they would sit around and they would elaborately describe what they wanted to eat in like rich detail, and they would find that it would provide some satisfaction for their hunger, which is an interesting thing because like what to me that's a good example of how talking about an instinctual activity provides a measure of satisfaction for it, because so much of the pleasure is in fantasy. You know, it's not the physical activity that is satisfying, it's the fantasy about it, you know. So I thought that was a really good example that reminded you, what you were saying reminded me that's why the Torah is against like sexual speech or aggressive speech, because you're feeding that part of yourself, you know, even though you're not engaging in the activity.
But it's interesting because it seems like it had the opposite effect for them. Like it satisfied them, and they didn't have to.
Well, when I say satisfied, what I mean is that like it's satisfying it in the sense of the cravings, but it's definitely like they're still attached to food, you know.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that in the sexual realm, it's going to anchor you to sexual fantasies and stuff like that, and that's why the Torah says you should minimize it, you know. Yeah.
Which will inevitably lead to you presumably also engaging, like in the same way, like if they had food, they would
Yeah, right.
go eat the really rich things
Right.
that they were
Meaning,
describing.
exactly.
Like,
Meaning like the people who spend their whole lives in the culinary world, like talking about like eating taiva, it's going to be very hard for them to break away from that because they spend so much of their psychic energy like involved in that. Okay. So anything in that first paragraph we want to elaborate on, or are we good with the level we did? I'm good with the level we did, but I'm fine if we have other stuff. Okay. V'chein b'divrei Torah u'b'divrei chacham. So now he's getting into that thing he says in the Turkey Aleph that this is not. Nihu divrei hachacham ma'atim v'inyanei merubim. Yeah.
Actually, I do. Why does he? Actually, I might just. I was gonna ask why does he bring good stories, but I think I kind of answered.
I think you did also. Yeah. And it's I guess it's a general question on the Rambam. When he quotes Mamare Chazal, why? Meaning, for halakhic stuff, for purely halakhic stuff, I understand you just bring the halakha. This is kind of a gray area where he's already explained the mitzvah. I don't think anyone would argue that if you ripped out this page, if you ripped out this halakha, the page you need, if you ripped out this halakha, I don't think anyone would say, oh, you're missing a halakha in the halakha bidrachav.
Right.
So once he's going in, like what determines how many of the many statements of the Chazal he's bringing in to like elaborate on this stuff, you know? And I don't know if there's like a solid like prescriptive answer to determine that, you know? So that kind of pertains to your question, which is, could the Rambam have not said any of this? I think so. Like, for example, later on when he's talking about at the end of the halacha, when he's talking about, let's say, kina. There's lots of statements about kina, but he doesn't bring any of them, except for kina v'tava v'kol motias anam min ha'olam.
Right.
So like, I don't know if like he had to say this, but it's definitely, we don't see it's beneficial that he did, and I think that's good enough. And your answer explained even more why, because it's beneficial.
So this is entering into a different related question, which is why is he even talking about shtika? Because he gave a principle of what you're supposed to do in terms of Deos.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you could say that it's he's giving an example because we talked about how it should be at the point on the spectrum where you're not tied to either thing. So like you're not tied to either extreme.
Mhm.
So here, this is something where that point is like far towards one
Right.
side, but this is about like the middle of that.
Okay, that's actually a good connection to the previous part of the pair. This is not an exception to the rule of Deos in the same way that Ha'as and Gova Lev are, but like you said, it practically speaking, it is going to be further along towards the side of silence rather than verbosity, and therefore it's worth mentioning because otherwise you might go in like the middle, where you're, let's say like not reducing the amount you speak in the permissible. You're omitting the prohibited and objectionable, and then you're just speaking however much you want in the other stuff. Yeah.
So is this, we're taking this as this is the middle as opposed to like this is the chatid?
Yeah, I'm taking this as the middle.
Okay.
Maybe Rav.
Yeah.
That seems to be
Classic.
chatid,
Question: why bring down that example as an example? Like if we're
Right.
framing this as the middle, then shouldn't you give us the middle
Well,
example?
I think it does illustrate what you're striving for,
Yeah, I think
even
the
if you
point-
can't actually do it. The Yarda B'shtika applies to everybody, and the Lo Yidaber Ela B'dvar Chachma O B'dvar Shesarach Lahen L'chai Gufo, that regulates everybody. But then he immediately follows it up with like the with the technically that was still shtika because he didn't say any words. He follows it up with the highest example of that.
Right.
What that looks like. Yeah.
Right.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was saying that it's not just calling us this because this is an exception. I think it's saying it's highlighting what something that is highlighting what being in the middle could look like, even though this isn't in like the middle of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It's like it's saying not every data like is the middle like equidistant from the two endpoints.
Yeah, ironically, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we defined it before, but
Yeah.
I know what you mean. That's not, I would say, well, okay. I see now why you're asking the question about the chassid, because this is not the middle. It's the derech tova, but it's not the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he's like saying this example because like he's trying to give like a Gadol story, which you're supposed to say, then like in terms of what you were saying, like how is he differentiating like which chazal to bring in? Like there's so many statements of chazal.
Yeah.
So like I guess you could say like he just wants to bring like he could pick from any Gadol story, I guess if you want to call it that. And like why make one up when like there are all these like just meaning this question still applies to like why this one specifically, but like if he's just looking for one to bring down, it makes more sense to like bring down something that Chazal said as opposed to just like fabricate one on his own.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shows that it's attainable in real life because the real guy did it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. B'chein b'divrei Torah
Why
b'divrei Chacham.
are we saying that not the middle?
Yeah.
Well, it's not in the middle in terms of it's not the middle amount of that the person can do. Because the person is going to be mostly quiet.
In the Deios, it's the middle of the Deios.
What is that? But it's not the middle from. It's not equidistant from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you take the average of the two extremes and then that's what you do. Like you say there's 0% speaking, there's 100% speaking, and so you do 50% speaking. That's not how you determine what the middle is. The middle is the part like the derech tova is the part on the spectrum where you're not tied to either extreme.
Yeah, I have a raya that this is chassid, which is that the Rambam holds that Pirkei Avos is how to be a chassid. And this is from Pirkei Avos.
Hmm.
Lo motzasi laguf tov el shtika.
Pretty good, right?
I mean, it's not for everything, but like, give it the Rav story and this thing.
Right.
Well, I can't argue with that, right? But I don't know, right? I wouldn't be so certain that not know.
Yeah, it is a good question. What
I
the
don't
middle
know
would look
how
like.
I'm saying I don't know.
The only thing I can say about the middle is that I think the middle would not have a problem with speaking neutral things or optional things.
No.
Yeah, and I also don't think that the middle would have would require that you minimize speech of chachma, like he's about to say.
Why?
Because why would you?
Well, maybe the middle is just speaking when necessary.
That's what I was thinking. That's why I'm not thinking that it's not the middle.
Yeah, but necessary is like, let's read it in the next halacha. Chaim b'divrei Torah u'b'divrei chachma, yu divrei hachacham ma'atim v'ineinehem merubim. So even in words of Torah and Chachma, the words of the Chacham should be, is he talking about a psychologist? No, I'm just kidding. It's the Deios definition. They're, what is it? No. No, that's what the kind of questions are. Yeah, no, you sound like this. Yeah. No, that was just once and never again. Ma'atim and inanim merubim. The words should be few and the idea should be many. And this is what the Chachamim said. Someone should always teach his Talmud concisely. If the words were many and the ideas were few, this is foolish. Because a dream comes with much preoccupation, and the voice of the fool is in an abundance of words. So what I was going to say is, if you're going with this svara that like the necessary middle path equals necessary, so would you say that teaching your student concisely falls into necessary?
What do you mean?
Meaning, a person who's in the middle path, would he worry about teaching in the fewest words possible or not?
If he's concerned with only speaking what's necessary, then he would.
Then you would say that, yeah. For some reason, I'm saying that that's a little too, sounds like that's going beyond the middle.
No, I think
That's
you're right.
intuitively. I can't prove it right now.
Yeah, it feels that way to me too.
Yeah. Like, hold on just a second, let me see if I can articulate a little bit more. Meaning, like, I can't articulate more. Yeah. Not yet.
According to what you're saying, what do you mean? Then that they did that. Well, like,
Well, it's a fuzzer.
no, no, one thing,
I want to say it's the chassid.
Yeah,
This is all done with the chassid. Yeah.
Not the
What?
main fuzzer.
like, what's Hasidus here?
The Hasidus is that even in things that aren't bad, you are striving to distance yourself. You're leaning, like we said with the Chassid, you're leaning toward one side, on the side of away from the bad thing. And here, the bad thing is excess speech, right?
That's unnecessary.
Right.
Like if
Yeah.
you can get the idea across through like concise, clear speech, that's better. Do that.
Right.
What's the neutral idea?
But I just want to maybe clarify your intuition.
Yeah.
That maybe the Chacham, I mean, I could be wrong about this. I think the Chacham, like the middle guy, is like he's in the best position to avoid negative consequences and get positive consequences. But here the neutral permissible speech doesn't have any consequence at all.
Mhm.
So he's not going to care about whether he said that or not.
So you know what we didn't do? We kind of skipped a step. We didn't talk about why you should minimize the permissible speech.
Yes.
I feel like we should
Yeah.
answer that.
Oh, and we did. Oh, you were saying before that. It
Not in
was,
Hasidus?
What?
it was for consequences. You were
Uh,
saying that it was.
yeah, that's how I was interpreting the kol hamar b'devarim maybe late. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, Okay.
What are you gonna say, Fine?
We're saying that completed though. Yeah.
I'm still on that. I still can't prove it, but I'm still inclined to think that that's Hasidus.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
Mhm.
Oh, hold on. Didn't we answer this yesterday? Doesn't the Rambam at the end say that it's the middle path? Or not? When he says in halacha Zion, Zion 2, at the end, klalo shel davar. Yelt b'mida habeinani sheb'chol dea v'dea ad shiyu kol deot mechuvanos be'emtzayos v'hu shesholem homer b'chol derech hadaehu yikonu. So that seems to imply that all these deos that he was listing, other than kaf and govalev, were deos and sayos, because that's what he's saying. The sum of the matter, meaning the sum of everything he's been saying in this last part,
Oh.
is that you should go in the middle day. And don't tell me that he's saying the sum of the main mitzvah, because that he already said in the first parak.
Yeah. Maybe you should sound like the whole thing.
You could say that, but you shouldn't. No, close to davar in. Meaning he ended like look the way he ended the first parak. He put it in terms of the mitzvah of ulafisha or what I mean, depending on where you want to start.
Yeah.
But like the very last, maybe tova uvrachal atmos nemar laman havi Hashem alavram etc. You know, like that was where he concluded the mitzvah. So we already know that you could go in the middle path.
Mhm.
And now he's saying, and then he walks you through all these particular deos, and he says the sum of the matter is within each deo, like the ones we've been saying, you go to the middle path. So it sounds like all the ones he's saying before here are the middle path. This does sound like the middle, yeah.
Doesn't shetivoy mean to command?
In
not in
which
this
halakha are you
context.
referring to now?
Well, wherever he's saying Vuhu shetivoy chachamim. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he said it in both.
Yeah, but we said that before that the command here is not like mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It's just that,
Mhm.
you know, like instructing you. You know? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Why are we assuming that there's only those two deos that are exceptions to the rule? Maybe this would also an exception.
Well, he certainly doesn't portray it in the same way he does the other two. That he ties. They say what?
That they're the only two exceptions.
No.
I mean, he says,
Yeah.
so he says, "V'hu gova halev, right? Ela yisracha adam al-katei acher, v'hu gova halev, v'chein akas."
Yeah.
And he doesn't say v'chein hashtika, v'chein ha, whatever the other ones he goes. Yeah, I think it's mashma that it's only those two.
Well, I was gonna say it's also shtiga because the way you talk about it, and then after he goes and talk about how other deos he should be daily.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Yeah. Yeah, now I'm inclined to think like that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't use any terms of usher or dea ra'a or katse ha'acher or, you know, ma'od ma'od, you know, like it's just, it is one where the middle is very extreme.
Yeah.
And the excess would be where you are not even saying b'derech katara with the word chachma, like where you view silence as an ideal, you know, and that's bad. Yeah, yeah. That's like the story with the Rav, right? The that when he was a kid, then it wasn't enough to say the right svara. If he said it in one too many words, he got a potch, and if he said it in one too few words, he got a potch. You know,
Rough.
so it's not like his dad said, "Oh, you said it in it is rough," and that's why he said his brother, you know, was his older brother did not become the gadol. You know, that's what they say at least. And what do you call it? You hear that story?
No.
So his older brother, which people don't talk about his older brother, right? People only talk about his older brother apparently was, obviously he was a chacham, you know, but he was known for two things. He was a chemistry professor in YU, and he was he was expert in Talmud Yerushalmi. And the story I heard, I don't know if this is legit or not, but the story I heard is that basically, so the Rav told the story about how that was his father gave a potch for too much and too few, and he said my brother couldn't take the potches, you know, and so when his brother was in conflict about it, so he asked for advice from somebody, I don't know who it was, and the person said, and this is already, I guess, when the Rav was excelling and was going to be like the next, like Soloveitchik. So he asked for advice, and the advice he got was, you should choose areas to excel in that your brother does not excel in. And so he chose chemistry and he chose Yerushalmi. And so he got his involvement in Chachma through that and was not in competition with his brother, and made peace with that, and the Rav became the Rav, But the point I was bringing the story for is it's not like Rav Moshe Soloveitchik said, oh, you said it in 3 words, but 2 words is even better. No, he gave him a pot for saying it in 2 words, because if you're not saying enough, what is not being said, in Chachma also, yeah.
That's why I'm not like I don't think
Wait, no, now which one you are? You're still going, you think it is the Chacham and not the Chassid. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I changed my mind. Yeah, whatever.
Well, it's Rav a Chacham or a Chassid?
Is Rav?
Yeah.
Well, according to what we're saying now, then he's a Chacham.
Then why is this a noteworthy thing? If the
Yeah, true.
if the never say single material koyama.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. No one is saying that you shouldn't be a chassid, right? The Rambam said earlier that being a chassid is good, And our question was, why is the Rambam talking about shtika at all? So I'm comfortable saying that he's painting the portrait of what chachma is, of the middle dea. But that doesn't mean he can't bring in any chassid stuff, because the chassid stuff does shed light on what is good about what the chacham is doing. He's just erring on the side of.
The Rav is the Chassid.
The Rav is a chassid, yeah.
Wait, but isn't not saying any Sikha Matela?
Yeah.
No, so I still don't think that. No, I think that, and I am basing this on the Rambam Pirkei Avos, but there he doesn't say you should never say Sikha B'Tela. He says you should minimize Sikha B'Tela. So minimizing Sikha B'Tela is the Chacham, is Chacham, is middle path. Never saying Sikha B'Tela would be a chassid.
When is it necessary to say Sikha B'Tela?
When you're doing business, you're not going to make any business deals if you don't say them, right? Or saying like making small talk with your, what was that?
Yeah, that's B'Tela, I guess.
Yeah, it's sikha. It's permissible. It's not in the other categories. Yeah, or let's say when you're, yeah, I'm learning that as the 5th category of the Rambam, sikha b'tela.
So you just didn't do business.
Yeah, I mean that's entirely possible. You didn't do business. Yeah.
Shortcomings and Sikha B'Tela they're both in permissible speech.
Yeah, right. That's why I'm saying that. Yeah. Meaning it's not, Sikha B'Tela cannot be shel mitzvah and cannot be praiseworthy speech, and it's definitely not isur, and it's definitely not objectionable. So it has to be 5th category.
Yeah, but it's not for a purpose.
Yeah, it's not for well, no, I wouldn't even call it that, because Sikha B'Tela, the 5th category is for a purpose. When you make money, that's for a purpose. When you like talk to your wife, that's for a purpose. What was that? Yeah, I am saying that.
Yeah, it's
because what else is it? Yeah. It can't be anything else.
Well, maybe they're just both part of the larger category. I guess Sikha B'Tela though, the category.
Yeah, I'm Sikha B'Tela is the 5th category. Permissible, yeah, they're synonymous. And he even called it sikha. I mean, did he use the word sikha b'tela? I don't think he did, but
right. What he said.
Look, we have different names for things. This morning he called it sikha skulin, or last night he called it sikha skulin. Or the Miri did. It's like I don't care what it is.
Right, I guess I'm wondering, how do we know that that's what he's referring to?
Because there's nothing else it can be referring to. He did call it sikha b'tela, by the way.
I was just saying sikha b'tela.
Oh, sorry, that's the
permissible. It doesn't have to be equal to permissible.
Yeah.
This is another option that you're not.
You think the other option is either Sikha B'Tela means 5th category, or within the 5th category there's permissible speech for a purpose,
right?
And permissible speech not for a purpose.
Okay, I can see that distinction. Yeah.
And is that Rav never did permissible speech not for a purpose?
Right. So he did do business. Right. Yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
Or he could have done whatever was necessary. He did just exactly that and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I think that makes more sense. Also.
Yeah, I think
It's
so
like
also.
he needed to get a shirt. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
like he'd be wasting more time. Like,
Yeah,
taking a
right.
shirt by like not like
That's true. That's
it
a
would
good point.
it would
Yeah,
it would
That'd be
benefit
weird.
him to just
Yeah.
go and be like, can I have a shirt? And
Right.
like just
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
off his day.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be
He
weird
had to
say
eat,
that-
like-
to call that bustle if it's
That's
what
what
they,
it's called.
yeah. If what do you think?
Right. Yeah, the
um,
thing that what you're saying makes
like,
more sense.
I need to eat. Can I have some food?
Right.
You know, like it's weird to say that's like. bustle.
Right.
You didn't say the word song.
Yeah.
Right, it goes up. Food, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So are
You're
we
hungry, want food.
are we good, Chaim?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so this is the middle path,
Uh-huh.
but the middle path here looks extreme, and Rav is doing what?
We think that's in the middle, man. That's my
Are we
suggestion.
still?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what?
No,
if he's
I
fussy,
think he's
Yeah, how
still
is he-
extreme.
how is he extreme?
Oh, because he's only saying the permitted things for what's absolutely necessary.
That's
But
still-
the middle guy.
No, the middle guy could say permissible things that are not necessary.
Yeah,
They're permissible.
He's minimizing. He's minimizing.
Right, and the difference is he's not minimizing, he's not doing any.
He's allowed to do it.
He minimizes.
Wasn't that already,
Isn't that just only doing it when it's necessary?
No, not the minimal amount. Meaning he does.
Kind of like the things I made before,
Yeah.
right? There's not engaging in a particular type of speech, and then there's when you engage in it, then cut down.
So the middle guy
Oh,
is
you got it.
saying things that are not necessary, but minimizing what he says that's not necessary. And we're saying
I don't know
Rob.
about that.
We're
I don't know
doing
that. I mean, yeah, yeah.
Well, so I
You
don't
can say
know.
how
that's why I was suggesting do
Yeah,
not.
Yeah, but Rav is the extreme because he wasn't minimizing permissible unnecessary things. He was not saying permissible unnecessary things at all. Only permissible necessary things, and that's like the extreme. I'm not sure. I don't know. The middle is minimize
I can only have one conversation at a time.
Minimize.
to minimize permissible unnecessary.
I see. I'm not sure what minimize. Is it? Oh yeah, I don't know.
That's not
It's not sure.
line.
What?
Minimizing your permissible.
So then let's devagify it. By the way, this footnote guy does say Sikha Batela is Sikha Stamis, and he quotes the wrong one that I quoted.
Nice.
So he does not say it's he says it's just fifth category. So
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's a disproof, but like I still like the
I
way
mean,
we're
that's-
reading it now. But
So what does it mean to minimize that? To only do that when it's necessary? Is that what it means to minimize that?
no, that's not the same thing.
No, what I'm saying is that minimize means like there's an extreme of what they like. You know, you can't have a conversation with Rob about football.
Right.
That's not minimizing it. That's not doing it at all.
Okay.
Minimizing is you guys have a conversation, but the conversation is gonna like, but you like stop the conversation earlier than like would be less like the natural flow of conversation. You know.
where are you guys getting the word minimize from?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
That's
not
what I
sure.
was writing up with.
Okay.
For what? For what?
I'm going to explain Yarbed because Yarbed is
That's
not
maximized.
Well, maximizing Sika.
Yeah, maximizing Tika.
Minimizing.
Yeah, right.
maximizing minimization.
Yeah, how do you alright, person or like, I have a question. And every category has to have a husband and a husband.
Yeah. That's how we set it up in Pergalov, I think.
Unless, except costs.
Except cost and yeah. All of the normal Deos
Right.
have to have a
Okay,
fucking cost.
okay, so we're saying the husband you don't in the point there. What you were saying was things that don't.
Didn't I change that at one point? I mean, didn't I say that saying only what you need would be chacham, and then not even saying what you need would be a chacham? Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying is going to the extreme.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did we?
I thought we should, maybe not.
Yeah, that's what's
No, but then we just switched back because of the footnote, didn't we?
No, I'm not switching. I'm not switching back to the Twitter.
Okay.
I'm switching back by saying I thought that's why I brought in the story from the Rav.
Yeah.
That like that is excess, meaning saying what you need is the right thing,
Mhm.
and then cutting out stuff that needs to be said would be a chassid, and that's bad.
It's
But you
bad
should-
to be a fussy.
Yeah, it's bad to be a chassid as an ideal, but leaning towards that side is a good thing. You know, like when in doubt, don't say it.
So confused.
Wait, so we're not saying that.
When in doubt, don't say it. Like,
yeah.
do we need to review let's review what a chassid is, okay? Let's
Yeah,
review
yeah.
what a chassid is. This is in the first parak, and it's halacha daled 4. On page 119. Any person whose deos are all middle, even deos is called a chacham. And someone who is very exacting with himself, and he distances himself a little bit from the middle path to this side or that side, is called a chassid. So that is, you are deviating from the middle path. So if we're saying the middle path is only saying what's necessary, and you are deviating from that to go more towards shtika, then that means you will be silencing yourself from things that are necessary,
Which is bad.
which is bad vis-a-vis what the middle path is. Now, the reason why you're doing that, we theorized earlier, is because in certain deos, then because there's a deotic drift, right, where you are going to be inclined towards certain ways, towards like speaking and stuff, you have to keep on
Going,
erring on the side of
which means
caution.
even in certain contexts, not saying what is necessary.
Exactly. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
order to keep getting
Right.
rebalancing.
Yeah. I was looking. Yeah.
The way that we were like defined chesed before, we were saying that it was a good thing, not a bad thing.
Well, it is, but it involves partaking of the bad. I'm saying it's good for your development, but it's bad in terms of what you're doing. It's like, is being a Nazir good or bad? Well, becoming a Nazir is good if you have an addiction to wine, right?
Well,
but you bring a korban chatas because you are engaging in an action of abstaining from a pleasure, which is bad.
the way that we were saying that a chassid is like is that he's putting himself more in line with what his yeah, he's putting himself more in line with what like his shiur is probably going to be.
Oh, right. We did say that. We had 2 theories of chassid.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we put it in terms of the Derech Hashem. And by the way, in the Derech Hashem, you should also be quiet, right? That's whether it, because God is in heaven and you are on earth, and therefore let your words be few. That's in Koheles. Or L'cha dumya sehila, to you silence is praise. Or kol, like whatever. There's like different ways you can say it, but like the emulating God, what does Moshe say to Klal Yisrael before God parts the sea? Be quiet and watch what God does, right? There is a, I do think that this is in line with that also.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
We're saying.
You know why I messed up, by the way?
Right.
Because I read Shmona Prakim over Shabbos to see if we can get anything from it. And Shmona Prakim has a slightly different theory of Chassidus. Here he says not l'tzad zeh or l'tzad zeh, but in Shmona Prakim he holds that there is a right way to do the on each day, and he speaks of it in terms of greater or less. So I think I got my wires crossed in terms of like which theory of Chassid we're going with. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the way that we said it was a chacham is someone who positions himself such that he has like the greatest like free will.
Yeah.
In that he is the least under the influence of either side. Whereas the chassid inclines himself more to towards the
right. That was the priming theory, right?
Yeah.
Priming himself for what is going to be most likely in line with Ratzon Hashem to make it desirable, not just neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
No, we're saying that when it turns around with no stopping from the arrow, we're saying that only means unmet needs.
I think that's what we're saying right now. Yeah.
Okay. And we're calling that
Middle. We're going down to Chacham. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I think that's what we're saying right now. Okay.
Rav is a chacham.
Rav is a Chacham.
So what is a chassid?
A chassid would be being silent even on things that he should say or that are good to say.
And that's a chassid.
That's a chassid because it's going to the left of a chacham. So let's say, practically speaking, that would be he could say a devar chacham and he doesn't, or he's saying a devar chacham and he says it in fewer words than needs to be said. And that is bad in the strict sense of like it's not being in the middle, but it's good. It's good in the sense that it is priming him for what is going to be better to understand, which we haven't really explained. We just kind of theorized. And also in terms of the tendency to speak, he's erring on the side of caution.
Right.
He's medactic atma b'yoser, so that when he does drift, he's always like pulling towards the silent side. Yeah.
And why are we saying that Rav's not doing that now?
Because I think we, at least I think that we're saying this because we said at the end klalot davar that these are all middle paths. That was the thing that made it me.
I think
It doesn't make
it's
like
Okay, well, so you're just going with footnote, and I'm
Yeah.
fine just going footnote and just saying what we're saying here.
Why
But
don't you also just not?
Right, you should read that.
It just turns out that you're arguing the footnote.
I'm fine. I'm just saying I like the theory that you explained of that within Sikha, there's Sikha Batela and then there's just Stam Sikha. That's supposed to say the Sikha Batela is Stam Sikha.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
arguing on the footnote.
That is arguing the footnote.
Yeah. But then would that mean Rav is a chassid?
No,
Okay.
no, right? Because
Um,
Rav is saying only what's necessary,
Yeah.
and that is what we're defining as the middle path in
That's
Shtika.
chacham.
That's fine.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by this. I'm not sure I see how this is a middle path.
Because we're saying that middle path is only saying what's necessary. Then to the right of that would be saying more than necessary, and to the left would be saying less than necessary. I think it's very
Right, so
simple.
middle class guys when I have thinking about football again. I am.
But why? I mean, if there's no consequences that come about from speaking out football,
Not
positive or
necessary.
No,
negative.
not necessarily.
It's not
Yeah, but
necessary.
why is the middle guy?
Middle guy only says it's necessary. That's what we're saying right now.
But he only does. Oh, meaning he doesn't act. Is that always the case by every day that like the middle guy doesn't act unless he acts?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not ready to go out the dance.
My question is this like the? I mean, maybe I have to think about it more, but is this like the person who's going to be best positioned to make a decision about speaking?
I think so, because he is looking for what is necessary to speak.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, presumably the chassid knows what is necessary to speak,
Right.
and then he chooses
Yeah,
not to
exactly,
say
yeah,
it in
yeah.
order to
Yeah, that
balance
point is
himself to get
undersold.
back to
That
the
point is
message.
undersold, by the way, in terms of when we're talking about chassid. We do have to realize, in order to be medactic on himself,
Right.
he has to know what the middle path is, and then
Right.
err to the left.
Right. Otherwise, he can never get
Yeah,
to
right.
past the middle path
Yeah.
because he wouldn't be able to distinguish between necessary and not necessary.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Can I just make a point just from going back to our knowledge?
Sure.
That probably is very obvious, but for some reason you felt like I said it.
sure.
That and we might have said this a million times, but that by cost and all the other and live and all that, the Benoni is the same, and the structure of everything in the psyche is exactly the same by those Deios as everything else.
Right,
And cost is an extreme.
right.
And it's the chassid. It's just that the mitzvah is to be a chassid by cost.
I don't know if I would say
I
that.
don't know if it's a hosting.
Well, it's, I mean,
The mitzvah is to be extreme.
well, yeah, no, because he says, if you look at Dalet 4,
Yeah,
he says,
in Aleph, right? Yeah. Oh, no, in base, yeah.
no,
Oh, oh, in Aleph,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Kol Adam Shedeos of Kon Deos Benus,
Yeah.
right? Umishum is Doc Big on blah blah blah. Neighbor Funds. Oh wait, no, sorry. Sorry, the next one.
Yeah.
Midrachim and Go Lev, blah 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 blah. And that's and he calls it
Mhm,
fun.
mhm. Yeah, you're right. You're
Well,
right.
you know, he's really that. He's not trying to that often makes sense.
No, I think we did explain that when you weren't there. I think so. Didn't we explain how? I think we explained it.
I don't remember.
I think we did.
Oh, we explained it as. Didn't we just say like internal, external, like the behavior?
Yeah, that's how we did it. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, like the way I'm reading it, you wouldn't have to make that distinction. You say that the chiyuv is to be a chassid.
I think you could also make the distinction and still read it that way,
Yeah.
and just say that he's talking about being a chassid in terms of internal.
Oh.
Like, I don't think it
Or
becomes
accident.
problematic, our
Right.
distinction, like it still works, I think. I don't know.
I think, yeah.
Even though it's just with Dell, we would use that as.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to open up that can of worms.
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad you said it, but I think I'm too loaded up on thinking about the shtika thing.
Yeah.
But so right now, at the end of today, or at the end of this session, who knows what's going to happen in the next 1 minute, but I am of the opinion, I'm saying this so that I can go back and listen to it if I need to, that that the shtika in halacha, in Permissible halacha dalet, is depicting the middle path.
Yeah.
And that Rav is a chacham,
Mhm.
and that extreme in one way would be saying more than necessary, and extreme in the other way would be saying less than necessary.
Yeah.
And that's where I am right now.
Oh, so why is what
Yeah.
like why is it such a big deal that he is fulfilling the mitzvah? Is it-
Yeah, why, that's what I was gonna say.
It's hard because the shtikas rov kol adam.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right,
hard-
it's
hard
still
to do this.
Yeah, it's very, very hard
rare
to
for
do.
people to do.
Yeah, it's hard to do this here. I think also this is kind of a premise from Mishlei also, but like speaking is just so easy. It doesn't even feel like an action.
Mhm.
You know, that's why the Torah doesn't count it as an action. You know, but this I think helps me appreciate why the Rambam had to talk about this, because it is difficult to understand this as the middle path.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
clearly, this whole discussion points to the fact that we would not have. We didn't even know that this was the middle path. You know, so cool if you had to like figure it out on your own. You
Right.
know.
So that's
Yeah.
why he gave us the example in the
And-
context of saying this is the middle path, so
Yeah.
that we would have it for reference.
Right,
It's
and-
still crazy high
Right,
level.
and I'm saying why the Ram had to devote so much space to this middle
Oh,
path in
okay.
general, because it's not an intuitive middle path. Like
Right.
spendthrift, that's easy. Like, you know, but this one's hard. Yeah.
Also, I feel like there's a misconception, I mean, from that question. Like, the Chacham is not in a way.
Well, it's
Well,
fine,
noteworthy,
but-
noteworthy. Not
yeah,
it is
that's-
praiseworthy, but like
Right,
noteworthy.
right.
You know, like he doesn't cite
Right.
examples of famous people who were generous and famous people who were like frugal. You know. But here it's like very hard. Even Cutters didn't do it. You know, like yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Thought people say.
Yeah.
I think what we should do is